Welcome into episode 340 of the podcast, Kentucky Basketball Podcast, KSR Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio, and I'm producing this and hosting this at the same time. So it could get wacky. It could get real nutty tonight, Sean. If this turns into an absolute disaster, it is what it is. You guys just kind of have to live with it at this point. Sean Smith, thank you so much for joining tonight. Sean Smith of Frederick Douglass Basketball, who is fresh off a coaching clinic up at Dayton as he's wearing a Dayton shirt. So getting us all the inside scoop on Kobe Brea. So you are our mole for the week. Tell me what you learned.
Yeah, it's a great program. I was there from Sunday till basically today. Yesterday was my last day, obviously, in the gym with those guys, but had a great week there. I did mention Kobe Brea, but I waited until like midweek to mention Kobe Brea. I didn't lead with that because no one really knows me as the guy on Sources Say up there. It's all about, basketball coaching and me trying to get to the next level as a coach. So everybody that I talked to, assistant coaches, they told me Kentucky's going to love him, that he's different than what Kentucky's used to getting. The word efficient just kept being used and thrown out. I did talk to some younger guys in the program, and they're a little hurt that Kobe's not going to be there. And I mean, look, that program. The cool thing about being there this week is they also produced a first round NBA draft pick the week that I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool to see those coaches be there with us on Wednesday, fly out, go to the draft, and then be right back there Thursday morning when I walked through the door. And I literally stayed, I think, 30 steps from the practice facility. So I was on campus for a full day. I slept in a twin bed, taking me way back to the college days. But no, it was a really cool networking thing for me too. Like, I met coaches from obviously Dayton that I'm building relationships with, but also met some college coaches at different levels that I got to network with too. And it's a small world. You start talking with people, and this game is one big network, Jack, because there were players that I know that those college coaches coached. And I'm like, I have guys that are friends in this business that I had no idea who this person was, and we're so connected and kind of have these crossroads and everything where our careers cross paths with the same exact people. And so really cool week for me.
Yeah, I was at the that Shelbyville Titans shootout event this past weekend, this past weekend, and Coach Henderson with Dayton was there, and I talked to him, and I was like, I don't really know how to approach conversations like this because we did steal your best player, best shooter, one of the best players on the team. So, like, is it like a taboo topic to like tell you thank you? Like, how does this work? And he was like, dude, it's tricky. Not all coaches are going to be totally happy about, talking about their former players that got stolen from them. They're like, look, it's Kentucky. You have to understand that when that phone call rings and you have the best shooter in college basketball, he's going to get swiped from you. It just happens. And he was like, and at our level, we kind of do the same thing for the mid-majors that are kind of looking for their own version of a jump. It's like, it happens. Kobe is a beautiful kid, has a good head on his shoulders, is there for the right reasons. He was like, you will absolutely love him. No love lost, no hate. Like, we feel totally content with each other. It's a good setup. You guys are going to love them. So but very cool opportunity for you. Proud of you. That it was really cool following along and seeing what you were learning. And you kind of getting the inside scoop. Jacob Polachek on here was like, is Anthony Grant guest hosting today? No, he is not that I know of. I hope not, because I don't know how to add somebody else in here. I'm producing this on the fly. So sorry, Anthony Grant, if you want to get on the show, you're out of luck.
And that's not the only trip that I'm making up there. I'm actually going back again for 4 days in late July. So, they liked having me around. And when I was leaving, they threw out 4 more dates to me, and I guess I'm going back. But I was there to put myself in position to make that jump. And I know that's something me and you've been talking about. I learned how we talked about coding film. everything. So here I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing and getting paid to do, because I actually got paid to do some things there this week too. But when I had downtime, I I was probably the gnat that was flying around everybody, and I'm like, just like, hey, what are you doing? Like, here, let's sit down and talk. And I was just networking constantly. But hey, that's a great program. Arguably, probably, Jack, you could make a case it's the best program in Ohio right now, especially in recent years and things. Like they're doing an excellent job there. And but really cool week. But let's talk some Kentucky basketball, because it was a
Brett,
great play.
Brett says, has Jack already done the ad reads, or will he wait until the end? Buddy, I got to remember to like even like the screen setups. I got to know what to click on and what to do. Like, we're taking this thing one thing at a time. But since we're talking about it, I guess I can talk about our new friend. We're going to be talking about them for a couple of weeks, because there is a very cool charity event coming up called Cruising for a Cause. Do you like car shows and raising money for charity? Then come join Middle Ground for Cruising for a Cause on July 6th at the Valvoline World Headquarters in Lexington, Kentucky, to raise money for Habitat for Humanity. The car show begins at 11 a.m. and will wrap up at 3 p.m. There will be several awards, multiple categories, and Miss Kentucky there. There will also be multiple food trucks, top vendors, and activities for the kids. The first 100 entries to purchase their tickets online will receive a dash plaque celebrating this charity event. So come join us on July 6th to raise money for Habitat for Humanity at Cruising for a Cause. Spread the word. So it was like a fever dream of a week for BBN, specifically in our KSR realm. Just like starting Tuesday with the press conference with Mark Pope, and you just arrive and it's warm and welcoming, and they have cookies laid out for you, and he talks for 30 minutes. And when you ask a question, you get a direct answer, and you get actual insight with direct responses of what you're looking for. I asked Mark Pope, hey, what's going on with that 13th scholarship spot? You've had 6 practices up to this point. Do you feel any different about how those, how you want to use that 13th spot? Do you feel the same? Do you have any idea of what direction you're going with it? Said no different. No difference. Obviously didn't get Will Riley. That was off the board, but said that we're going to explore the international route. Said that, as the in-person recruiting of, evaluation events kind of ramp up throughout the summer, we're going to kind of have a pretty good pulse of what we're looking for. We already have a good pulse of what we want on our end, but we'll be able to see in person kind of who that person is. So we don't have a name yet, but we have an idea of where we're going to be looking in the next couple of months. It was like, oh, that was a direct point blank period answer. And we know kind of a timeline of what that looks like, and, who they could be looking at, where they could be looking. So that was step one of the week. Then on Wednesday, London, Kentucky's own Reed Sheppard goes number 3 in the NBA draft to the Houston Rockets, the number 1 college basketball player in the draft, Sean. The number 1 player in college basketball taken in the NBA draft. Just in, like, as we've talked about, the best case scenario in our heads, like your BBN fan fiction, what that looks like for Reed Sheppard's career. There is nothing better that could come from other than winning a national championship, obviously at Kentucky. But for him and his individual goals and what he could possibly be, there was nothing bigger and grander than what we saw with Reed Sheppard. And then Rob Dillingham goes number 8. So let's kind of dig in there first, because it's kind of the newsiest thing that just happened. I still can't believe it. Like, I still can't wrap my head around seeing him step up in his green suit on his mom's birthday and shaking Adam Silver's hand on draft night at number 3 to the Houston Rockets as a franchise centerpiece prospect moving forward, Sean.
Yeah, I was actually laying in bed late Wednesday night, and I don't know what made me just randomly think about it. I said, a 13th region kid just went number 3 in the NBA draft. Like, wow. He was playing high school basketball at North Laurel just a year ago. He gets to Kentucky. You and I covered that for a couple of years leading up until he got there. The same event that you were at last weekend, we watched him play in and everything. And we were sitting there talking about what is Reed's career project to be? And I think all of us thought it was going to be a long time. But as the season went along, we knew that the NBA was a really good opportunity and possibility. I don't know if we ever really grasped the thought of it though until he's called out number 3 in the draft. And that's when it hit me. I was like, man, this thing actually happened. Like, he was that good. He got picked at that spot, and he set himself up to have a really good career. And I think that's when it really hit me. And then when Rob gets picked on the lower half of that, it's just like, man, Kentucky had 2 top 10 draft picks in their backcourt. And I'm not even going to get into, there's no use. I mean, it's such old stuff now. Like, I tweeted it the other night about coming off the bench, but you're not winning that argument regardless, whether you're on the other side of it or the side that I'm on it, Jack. But it's just crazy to me that was Kentucky's backcourt this year, and it was that good. And those guys are going to have a ton of success in the league. It's unfortunate that they didn't get that run in the NCAA tournament to show it, because guards usually win those games. But hey, those 2 are going to have a long career in the NBA, and they're both going to be very exciting to watch. And then obviously we'll get into Antonio Reeves too.
I think being bitter is totally fair. I do. Like, I do think that seeing it and feeling it in real time, seeing Rob go 8 to the Timberwolves, and like knowing that the Timberwolves traded 2 future, like they traded like 7th graders for him right now, which is hilarious. 2020 or 2030 and 2031 picks. But they were, unprotected. One of them was unprotected. The other one was a pick swap. So like, those are pretty valuable picks that the Spurs or the Timberwolves made it to the Western Conference Finals. So they were picked 27 or whatever they were going into the night. So they had to buy that pick straight up. Like, they didn't use their own first round pick. They bought Rob Dillingham straight up in his draft spot straight up, because they saw him as that final missing link next to Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns to kind of push them over the edge to win, go to the finals. Like, the Houston Rockets saw Reed Shepherd as their franchise cornerstone and wanted him to be kind of you talk to the people with the Rockets afterward, and they were like, had Reed gone before then, we were going to trade out. There wasn't anybody else we were interested in. We had him number 1 on our board from start to finish. It was like, they view him as their future. The Houston Rockets. There's one end of that. And then now you get to number 8, where the Spurs was kind of a hot team for him, but the Minnesota Timberwolves, a legitimate competitor for the finals, saw our Rob Dillingham as their missing link to kind of get them over the hump to that next level. It's like, can we understand the magnitude of what we had in our back pockets in Lexington this past season? And then it what made the sting even more so was in day 2. Watching Justin Edwards, who was seen as a number 1 pick potentially going into the year. We said a million times on this show that was totally outrageous. Need to kind of slow things down a little bit with that optimism. I loved him. I thought he was a clear lottery pick, but never in a million years would have thought that he would have fallen out of the field completely and then sign a 2-way as an undrafted free agent. And you just think of, and I guess now that he's gone, we can kind of just shed some light about how that relationship went. They saw through, Justin's side, they saw through him starting the games, but then the gaps between the start, playing at the end of the first half, starting the second half, and then playing at the end of the game. Like, they saw those gaps and were like, you're not playing through Justin. You're not letting him kind of work out his kinks and kind of the mental struggles that he's dealing with. So you didn't even, Cal didn't even get the benefit of the doubt from the kid that you were helping. On paper, Justin Edwards got the starts, and I think in Cal's mind, he was like, well, I started the kid. He had to kind of figure it out from there. But their side didn't even see the reward of the starts. They saw kind of left him hanging out to dry a little bit. Like you let him kind of hit the mental barricade that he went through and watched him struggle and kind of drown a little bit and didn't really throw him a lifeline. So if you're going to make that call by starting Justin and basically saying, I don't care what you guys say, I'm going to start my guys and Rob and Reed are going to come off the bench. Like if you're going to make that call, at least make the person that you're helping out feel that way and feel that they're getting a lifeline thrown at them, because they didn't even feel that way. So it just felt like such a waste of a year of such historic talent. It just felt like a complete waste. And that's why I do understand the bitterness with some fans, because I genuinely feel at least some of that as well.
I did too, and I still do. And I was going to try not to make this this episode about that, because we've officially moved on to Mark Pope. But like I will say this: last year, I just felt like that Cal latched on to what his plan was to lead the team, and it's clear now that, look, Reed and Rob, in my opinion, I think from day one were better than the other collection of guards. Now, Antonio Reeves, him becoming a pro and getting drafted, that was not the case when he stepped foot on campus at Kentucky a couple of years ago. That was not. He was not getting drafted in that draft. We knew he wouldn't have been drafted a year ago, Jack. He came back, showcased his game, improved, became very efficient, rebounded the basketball, passed the basketball, became a better defender. He turned himself into a pro playing alongside two other pros. And I just thought that should have always been the identity for Kentucky this year, but it never really fully – I don't think we ever fully moved into it being Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham's team. I think that we were still hung up on, DJ's going to get there, Justin's going to break through, DJ's at Arkansas and another year of college basketball. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm glad that DJ went that route instead of putting his name in the draft and then trying to carve out a path as a two-way guy. Justin, this is where it kind of gets tough, Jack, when it comes to who's in your corner and who's putting you out there and what's the conversations like. I thought that Justin had a lot of holes in his game last year that needed to be taken care of. I think Justin has a ton of potential. He's got a tough road here, though, but he's going to have an opportunity. And I think that Justin will eventually become a player in the league that will have some success. I just don't know. I just hate that the path is going to be hard. Like, this is not the easy route to take on a two-way.
Like, I would making a ton of money. Like, I mean,
I would have liked to see another year of college basketball for him with NIL development, and then you enter again. But we know that this draft was talked about as a weaker draft compared to what's coming up, and I know that's in there too. But look, a lot of guys can go 3 or 4 years in college and still get a two-way deal. So I just think that once you leave college, now that clock is ticking, and it's on the other side of ticking. As long as you're in college now with NIL, you've got that to fall back on, Jack. And I think that helps a ton with maybe retaining some guys and giving some guys some situations. And then you had guys in this draft like Dalton Connect that, went to Tennessee, and I think he landed in an excellent spot with the Lakers. Like I'm still
going to hate his guts, by the way. There's some UK fans that were like, oh, he was always a guy that I kind of rooted for privately. And, I'm glad that he's no longer our enemy number one. And, I can actually root for him because his story is pretty cool and he is a really talented player. He's a Laker. I get to hate his guts for eternity, and I can't wait.
Well, you know me. I'm Team LeBron over here. So obviously Dalton Connect is now – I'm a fan of Dalton Connect for at least the time being. But now the thing that stung the most for me, though, was Antonio Reeves, was seeing him be an NBA pick. Not that I'm happy for Antonio. I want to reword that.
Thrilled.
It was the fact that I know now that Kentucky had 3 NBA guards on its roster last year, and that wasn't the combination of guys that we saw the most together majority of the time. And I think that's the part that stings the most for me. But hey, look, we've all moved on. We've turned a page. You can't go back and change anything. The only thing you can do now is look at what Mark Pope is doing, look at what John Calipari is doing at Arkansas. two entirely different approaches. You were in that press conference the other day. Listen, that's a guy that can talk, but he can't just talk too. He can teach. And he teaches the game at a high level, and I think that Kentucky fans are absolutely going to fall in love. And I know that's what Rick Pitino said, and we'll get into that. But I think the whole thing. I got asked about Mark Pope at Dayton and what I thought about Mark Pope at Kentucky. I got asked from coaches that don't coach at Dayton. I got asked about it from coaches that coach at Dayton. Like, hey, what do you think of Pope? Every single person thought that he's an exceptional teacher of the game, and his offense is very fun to watch. So, listen, when you get that many basketball minds talking about it, you start to realize that maybe Kentucky does have something here.
Last note on that, a parent from last year's roster after the draft ended texted me, more proof last season was just given away and it changed a bunch of lives. You know, like for better with Reed and Rob, obviously, because they were able to kind of become the other side of it of you got two clear superstars. Let them ride. Like look at these guys in short spurts, let them go. And then you get the other side of, not committing to a big. From start to finish, didn't commit to one single big, and they all kind of got screwed over at the end of the day. And it just, little things like that. But
it's tough. Like it's tough because, like, do I agree with everything that the way it was handled? Absolutely not. I didn't agree in the moment. I didn't agree the day after it ended. I still don't agree. And I think I'm always going to have like this bitterness towards it just because it was a wasted season when it comes to what you could possibly be. Was it a fun season? Yes. I enjoyed every single game watching those guys play. I would do it all again. But we knew this, Jack. We knew this a year ago around this time going into that year. We actually talked about it before the year before had ended, that it was a swing. It was a hit or miss chance for Cal. You're either going to get it right or you're going to get it wrong. There is no in between. And there was no in between. The only thing that I maybe could have been an in between is you got to the Sweet 16, then maybe we're sitting here not doing a total restart. Mm-hmm. Then I don't know if anybody wins in that situation. I think that it could have actually been worse. But look, we're going to talk about happier times. But congratulations to all those guys.
Trey Mitchell to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, even Justin to Philly. Playing for a contender. Cal tweeted that, he talked to Tyrese. He's going to take him under his wing a little bit. That's a cool storyline for him too, because if he does dig his way out of that, he's going to have the success story of all success stories there. So like it worked out, maybe not the way they hoped, but everybody's kind of in a good spot. Trey Mitchell, I heard, talking to some NBA guys, including with the Thunder, that his work, he looked really damn good. Trey Mitchell looked as healthy as he ever did, and they were kind of like, whoa, this dude can play. So he gets to play summer league. They play out in that Salt Lake City, summer league. So he gets to play a ton, like 8 games in the summer league, while some of the other teams that are just in the Vegas one only play 4. So really, really good opportunity for all 5 of these guys. Antonio Reeves, man, I love him. So glad that he got to hear his name called. I know he didn't get like his name called by the deputy commissioner in the second round. His name went across the ticker when there was a KFC and Verizon commercial in the back. It reminded me of when Jokic had the Quesarito commercial going. Same exact situation that happened with him. It was just a bad timing with the commercial break. But love that kid. I love all these kids. I really, really love this past roster, and I'm rooting for all of them to succeed. And I can't wait for summer league to get to watch them all kind of up close and personal.
Is there a guy, though, that you think has the most success? Like, if you had, like, of them all, who do you have the most confidence in? And, like, I'm talking let's say a 12-year NBA career.
Before today, I probably would have said Reed, because he's a safe bet. He's in a really, really high floor kid. Reed is going to be successful. There's a 0.0% chance he's a bust, because at minimum he's going to make shots and make the right plays. Like at minimum he's going to be a connector. At minimum he's going to be a really, really solid high floor role player, and that's a 10-year guy no matter what. So not counting the high floor guy, a sneaky one to me is Antonio Reeves after today, especially the trade where, DeJounte Murray goes to New Orleans, and they trade Daniels back to Atlanta, opening up kind of that scoring role spot that they kind of needed in Antonio Reeves. And he's now thrust into like the guy in that role where I kind of expect Antonio to step in day one. He's older, 22-year-old guy. I expect him to step in day one and make shots and have an impact on that roster. So I think he's kind of a sneaky pick there where he's going to show off a bigger impact day one than he probably would have 6 hours ago because of this trade kind of aligning in his favor where they kind of prioritize defense and, opened a gap for a dynamic scorer in Antonio Reeves. So I think he's the sneaky pick right now that I already thought he was going to be successful, but he found himself in a really, really unique spot where he could play early and play really well.
I think so too. That was actually going to be my pick as well. And Rob, to me, of the two, I don't think Rob's got a lot of pressure on him. I mean, you're going in with guys that have already been there in the playoffs. You've got arguably, some will say here pretty soon, maybe the best player in the league, and Anthony Edwards, or the best guard in the league, like the way he's going. And, Karl Anthony Towns, like Reed's going to do his thing too. But I thought it was very important in this draft that you had guys, I hate to keep mentioning him, you had a Dalton Knecht get drafted that's gone a different route of college basketball. You had Antonio Reeves drafted that's gone a different route of college basketball. I thought now you can see some value in getting those transfer guys late in their career as a junior, senior, possibly college basketball that have played elsewhere. And it's no longer just about some NIL money or about putting yourself in position to be a pro overseas. It's now the way the game is played, Jack. If you can take and make shots, there's a spot in the league. And there's a lot of guys that are going to be in that portal every single year that are probably looking at guys like that think, man, I can go to a program in the SEC and showcase my game against the best of the best, or I can go to the ACC or the Big 12 and these major conferences and turn myself into an NBA draft pick. Like, I think that was probably one of the cool things about it, was seeing those guys get picked.
Yeah. While fans are urging us to move the hell on from Cal, Pitino told us to move the hell on from Cal because buddy, when I tell you that this was a fever dream of a freaking day on Thursday morning when he goes on, pardon my take, is guest hosting KSR. They do it every year. Love them. They're excellent at what they do.
Get him. We tried.
So what fans don't know listening to this is I got in contact with Rick's people and they respectfully declined. So I'm going to take credit for putting the bug in their ear of, hey, there's an audience here that would love to hear from you. Let's kind of rebuild that bridge that was torched to the ground and put in the bottom of a river. Let's try to build that thing back up from scratch. So I'm going to take credit for putting the bug in the ear because he comes on with friends of the program, pardon my take, with Big Cat and PMT. And it was one of those, like, your jaw is dropped when he calls in and every new thing that he says is like, did he really just say that he's a booster for Kentucky football because he's really close friends with Mark Stoops and Eddie Gran? Did that just really come out of his mouth? And seeing the Louisville fans have just smoke coming out of their ears because they're so ridiculously pissed listening to all this unfold of him just drooling over Kentucky and saying, oh, I don't have a negative word to say about Kentucky. I totally understand why they hated my guts at Louisville. I would hate my guts at Louisville. Like, he's talking and I'm like, oh my God, he's saying everything perfectly. Like he was enemy number one in Lexington. And I mean, there was not a more hated man in that city for his time at Louisville. and even the years to follow, because it was such an ugly breakup with the FBI stuff and the details of that. Holy crap, Katina Powell, and just, I mean, everything that came together. And KSR having Katina Powell on the show, like having him be on KSR is, before John Calipari of all humans, it was a 0.0% chance of that all unfolding the way it did. And then it happened. So as it's unfolding, I'm like, holy crap, man, this is nuts. And the quote about, I understand why UK fans hated my guts, said, to me, I love Kentucky fans. They're very special. Treated me and my family in great reverence. I got nothing but great things to say about the Kentucky fan base. I totally get it today, why they were bitter at me for going to the University of Louisville. Obviously, I didn't get treated great when I was at Louisville, but sitting back on it and examining it today, I totally understand why. The reason why I was going back is I love Kentucky so much from my UK days and wanted to relive that love for the sport. Right now, they have a fabulous program with all sports, and I think it's going to be a special, special time for Mark Pope and the University of Kentucky Wildcats. It's like, and again, this man has lied through his teeth about like 10,000 things in his life, and part of it is he's playing his audience and like, don't get got. But man, it was genuine. It felt so genuine, and I loved it. I'm willing to open my arms and welcome him back home and just embrace this. This is a weird era. This is a weird time for everybody. Let's just accept the weird. Let's just embrace this and welcome it back with open arms.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you can kind of look and see that maybe time can heal a lot of things, right? Because there's been some time between it, not been at Louisville for a little bit now, and then you get Mark Pope, and then that video that he put out endorsing Pope in April, I think, was the one that kind of flipped a lot of people. And look, Rick should be loved by this fan base for what he accomplished in Lexington. For a while, Rick probably deserved to be hated for some of the other things.
Absolutely.
And so it kind of goes both ways here. But when your name is hanging in the rafters at Rupp Arena and you've won a national championship, you've been to multiple Final Fours, it should always be the good memories. And I think we're now transitioning into a time where that's what's going to be remembered most, probably, when we bring up Rick Pitino's name moving forward. Like when Rick does retire, it wouldn't shock me if he's sitting behind the bench in Lexington more often than he is anything else.
So on that note, I do want to ask you before we move on from that, there are fans that are like, I want him like a part of this program again with Pope. It's in some capacity, whether it be senior advisor. I think that's a little tricky. I could understand why you would want that basketball mind in your, but like it was kind of when we talked about the staff hires with Pope that you didn't need to just add nostalgia for the sake of doing so because Pope was the nostalgia. Very similar in the basketball mind sense where he learned his stuff from this man. You don't necessarily have to have him around. Like, keep him at an arm's distance where he's a friend of the program, but probably too touchy there to have him be a part of the program again moving forward as like a staff member of the sorts. Because I know fans were asking about that. Can he be the GM? Can he be the whatever? After he ends his time at St. John's as some senior advisor, maybe like the role that Cal signed on for his lifetime contract, have him be the ambassador of the program? Probably not, but I like where things are right now. This is a very comfortable keeping it at arm's distance while also understanding that we're good. We're back on good terms. I think that's a safe position.
I do too. Like I don't see that happening at any point of him being involved with the program when it comes to things like that. But I see him being a face that pops up, regularly in Lexington at games. The thing for me will be when, not if, but when Mark Pope gets Kentucky to a Final Four and they're competing for a national championship. Because look, if you do this job the right way, history has shown us that you will be playing in a Final Four. if you go about it the right way, more often than not, you will have an opportunity to win a national championship as the head coach at Kentucky. When that night comes, is Rick Pitino, John Calipari, and Tubby Smith sitting in the stands somewhere?
I hope so.
'Cause
That needs to happen.
that's what I'm hopeful for, is because look, Cal's going to get his moment at some point too in the future, where we can kind of look back and really truly remember all the good times. And he's going to be back in Rupp Arena, not as the head coach at Arkansas, but just there supporting Kentucky. That's going to come. We know that that's coming for Rick. We know that that's going to happen probably more than once for Rick at some point. But I just feel like that this is a program that anyone that has done anything good for this program should be celebrated, and should celebrate when those biggest moments happen, especially when you're no longer coaching. Now, right now, it's a little tricky because he coaches at St. John's. It's a well-respected program that can do damage in the NCAA tournament with rosters and win games. And if they play Kentucky, he's going to try to beat Kentucky. So, but when he's done there, I could see him more moving into a role that's at a distance, that is there to talk to Mark, but not be in the shadow of it or right there overshadowing what Mark is doing. Because look, when it was being brought up that John Calipari was possibly going to be an ambassador when his time was up here at Kentucky after the lifetime contract stuff, that was going to be a horrible decision. Because then who comes in next? Like, let's say it hadn't have been Mark Pope or been anybody else, you'd have had to be here. Let's say the last 5 years were successful for Cal. He would have been right there in the building, and everything that you've done, it would have been compared to that, or it would have been, well, you're not Cal. And that's just a tough thing to do when you're looking at that guy every single day. And I think that could be a tough thing. But look, I feel like that this is just kind of really cool because you're now blending the 96 and the 90s back in with what Kentucky is today. And it feels like that relationship between Kentucky and Rick Pitino, it needed this. And I think I'm excited to see what it does moving forward. At least you got a guy that's always going to speak well of Kentucky basketball. He's always going to speak well of Mark Pope. And that's a good thing for you. But are there going to be some recruiting battles going on with some of those kids in that part of the country? Mark Pope and Kentucky going up against Rick Pitino and St. John's? Probably.
Those Northeast kids, I mean, we'll see. It's going to be really fascinating just to see that dynamic play out. He did confirm that the home and home is on the books, like it's done. Not this year, but he will be back for the 30th anniversary in the 2025-2026 season at Rupp Arena, and then following that back up with Madison Square Garden the year after. Love it. Kind of that's what I'm talking about. Keep them involved. Keep, the radio appearances and maybe a video at Big Blue Madness, or shoot, have him come out and be a Y. I'm cool with that stuff, but let's kind of walk before we run with kind of making him a permanent fixture of the program moving forward. I just like that there was, you couldn't have burned a bridge worse than what Kentucky did with Rick Pitino and what Pitino did with us. So to show that you can rebuild that back gives me great optimism that the vitriol toward Cal right now will be completely short-lived. Probably like the day he's done coaching, we'll say, all right, you're back. Let's make this happen. Like, I think that's all kind of temporary because it's a fresh wound and he's at an SEC rivalry. I think even had he even left for a random conference, college basketball foe that wasn't an in-season rival, I think probably wouldn't have been as feisty as it ended up being. So that day will come quicker, much quicker than it did with Rick. But there will be a day where you will want all of those guys around your program. And I like how Pope addressed that at the his press conference in the Joe Kraft Center, looking at the wall and just seeing Cal's accomplishments and Joby's accomplishments, Rick's accomplishments, Tubby's accomplishments, and just like went down the row and was like, this is the Mount Rushmore of college basketball. Do you understand what this is to be a part of? you want those guys to be active, active participants in your program. So that day will come. It's going to be a minute for Cal because of where he is right now and where things left off, but it will happen. Quote from Pitino on that was pretty damn wild. Cal did a terrific job, but what happens with a lot of coaches, and there are exceptions to the rule, like with Bill Self and Mike Krzyzewski, is familiarity breeds contempt. You're there a long time. You get a little stale. You need another journey. This is now Mark Pope's time. Cal was great to the University of Kentucky, brought them a lot of success, and we wish him certainly well at Arkansas. Now it's time to move on and have a whole different brand. That was the quote of the day for me with Rick, where it was just like, man, that's he's right. He's totally right. It's what Cal said when he left, that he just needed a different voice and different platform. It was time, and I think we're all very much starting to feel like draft night was the last kind of the chapter, the last chapter of the book closing. I think that was the last kind of feeling that we're going to have with his time there, and saying it's now time to move on, which I think it's totally fair.
Yeah, and they've officially moved and off Richmond Road and stuff. I know if you're following Ellen's Instagram's account and everything that she posts, like that was a long process of getting out of Lexington, taking all your things and moving to Arkansas. But I do think Pitino said everything right, and I like the which tells you he probably thinks of himself as Kentucky. Like it's weird because there's moments with him that I forget that he's actually the head coach at St. John's when he talks, because it kind of feels like he's already kind of moved into that retired role in a sense, where he just talks about Kentucky freely and he can talk about anything he wants. But there's probably no other college basketball coach in the country right now that's talking about another program more than Rick Pitino is doing right now. Like, that Rick is talking about it often, but I think he said everything right when it comes to Cal, and he's right. Like, I wish Cal well. I saw Brad last weekend in Shelbyville, and it's weird. It's weird to see him in Arkansas attire sitting down there, but he actually got there, I think, for the final back half of our game, and then stayed for the next game and things. But it was just different seeing him there in a recruiting role, in an evaluating role, but also in a role as an Arkansas Razorback. That was really weird to me. And see, I've not got to see Cal in person. I know you've been there at some stuff, and seeing him in Arkansas.
I got a wave. I got a pleasant wave. I think I told you that. I got one. I was shocked. I like, because he gave some like cold death stares to some people, but like I got like a pleasant, like, it's like, oh, thanks, man. I didn't say hi, like didn't get any farther than that, but it was very much like hey, I don't hate your guts. Let's just kind of just accept this for what it is. It's like, oh, cool, sweet.
Listen, I'm being really careful about what I say. Like, this. I've had a lot of good things to say about Cal. Cal was the first college coach that I sat in on a practice for when I was 19 years old. And I've told this on here before. I was blown away with the way that he taught the game, with how I'm talking a man that would blow the whistle every 5 seconds and teach, because he wanted it to be perfect. I was amazed by it. His attention to details. Now, I didn't get to sit in on some of those practices. The ones that the media are at, Jack, are different, because he's watching, and they're not doing. Listen, I can tell you, they're not doing the same things when it's open to the media. Like, it's a lot of full court layup stuff and transition things. Like, but when you get into the meat and potatoes of an actual practice where there's nobody in the building that can put out whatever they want, it's different. And I didn't get to see one of those since I've been working in media, but I may try to sneak into Fayetteville at some point and watch a practice, and we'll see how that goes. And it'll be interesting. He'll remember the guy sitting in the front row of his press conferences for 7 years, that when he would ask a basketball question to the media and I would answer it.
Anybody see what I did? Yes, coach. I know exactly what you did.
So, no, I wish him well at Arkansas. And the NBA draft was the final step.
Mm-hmm.
And it coincides with, the house is empty. I think from what I followed on social media this week was Ellen's last week there. So it's wild that the NBA draft is in the same week, and we're kind of flipping the entire page here to John Calipari and family at Arkansas and Mark Pope and family in Lexington. But it's here, and before you know it, there'll be a game between those two at Rupp Arena, which will be probably one of the craziest nights that building's ever seen.
Can't wait. On that note, while we're talking about teaching and kind of what the new era looks like, talked to several people that were at practice over the last couple weeks. We're finishing up week 2 right now, and like the conversations you have with people that are there, regulars that were also there at Cal practices, are just like, the product is not even on the same like stratosphere in terms of, not in like, both way, you can win both ways. Cal is a proven winner at the highest of high levels. Things got stale at the end, but that dude won. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. We will not discount that ever. But in terms of teaching styles and in the focus on individual player development versus team concepts and instruction of, laying a foundation of, team dynamic and having an identity and things of that nature. They were like, not even, we're not even watching this in the same stratosphere of practices. It's just totally different. One guy I talked to was like, there wasn't a pro in the gym. There just wasn't. Jackson Robinson, the closest to that. But when there was such an emphasis on putting guys in individual positions to succeed, to make them catapult to their best, because that usually meant that they were putting you in position to win games. Again, there's different ways to do this. That was Cal's coaching identity. With Pope, it is so team specific and team focused that it's not about this guy looked better than this one, or, oh, well, this is the dynamic scorer that this team was missing. That he's the surprise standout. They were like, that doesn't exist. There aren't high level pro athletes. There wasn't one guy that you looked at and went, oh my God, that's a lottery pick. They were like, that just doesn't exist anymore. One person said, this was the first college basketball practice I have seen at the Joe Kraft Center in 15 years, which was just a crazy thing to say, because they were making a point, obviously, that this is a college team now, not an NBA team. It was coached as an NBA team before. Now this is structured to be the highest of high college basketball team and program, and the foundation laid with all of that. So is it better? Is it worse? That remains to be seen. We'll find that out when the ball is tipped with the season. But I hope fans are prepared for different identity, culture, messaging, foundation, what they stand for, just those things. It is just the people that have been there are just like, dude, this is weird in a good way, but like, in a refreshing way, but different. So different. Does that concern you, Sean? There are no pros in the gym? Or does it kind of, as we close the chapter of the NBA, the book, the Cal book with the NBA draft graduation night, as Cal put it, in kind of a refreshing way of saying this is going to be a program built on teaching and individuals and team instruction moving forward?
I think there's a balance when it comes to coaching, and this is probably in today's world of coaching, and to me, it's at any level. You got to have a balance of let your guys play, then you got to have a balance of when do you structure everything? Like when do you call a set? When do you let them play? And I think there's structure in both of those approaches. You can overcoach and you can undercoach, and there's a middle ground somewhere. And I think that Mark Pope is still gonna be in that middle ground, because the culture that is here, and I said it last week that it's how you word things. It's what do you call things in your program that maybe when you're playing it in high school or you're playing at another university. For most of these guys, it's been playing at a previous college. The way things were worded there, they're called these things are called differently at Kentucky. It's the same thing. It's just you word it differently, or you say it differently, or you use this term to describe it. And that is what you use in film. That is what you use in practice. That's what you use in every situation within your program. To me, you're already seeing how Kentucky's going to play. It's been talked about a ton. When you turn on the tape of BYU, it's the pitch ahead in transition. It's the quick three. And Cameron Mills put out a video today on UK Sports Network's Twitter account, and
love that video.
All the threes going up, and it weren't just going up; they were makes, a lot of makes. That's going to be a part of this. We knew that the moment that he was hired as the head coach of Kentucky, so that's going to be part of it. But to me, with a veteran-led team, with a lot of guys that can be vocal, it's probably a different vocal in this program for some of these guys. Maybe some are going to have to be more vocal. Maybe some are probably going to be less vocal than what they were at their previous stops. Like, roles will be defined as we get into the fall and into the winter. But for me, it's about how much does he let them play, but also how much does he really ingrain it in structure and get some structure with what he wants. I think having an older team, he's going to be able to let them play more. But letting them play that pace and things, it's still going to be structured, Jack. I've talked to you a ton about it. You got guys sprinting to the corner, you got guys sprinting to the rim. And you got a trail man coming that can make plays and knock down shots in transition and do some things too. Like, they're going to get into that secondary action in transition, Jack. They're going to do some things that I think is going to be exciting to watch. All of that is structured while also letting them play. So that's the culture I think that's being established is I'm going to let you go, but we're going to do it this way, or this way. You're going to have these options, and you're just going to make reads and play. And that's what I think Kentucky's going to do offensively. I am interested to see what their identity ends up being defensively, because I think Mark probably has a chip on his shoulder when it comes to that end of the floor right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he recruited that way, especially early on with getting the first few guys in this class. I think there's going to be a lot of attention to detail on that end of the floor to be really good there, because I think he has a ton of confidence in what they're going to be able to do offensively.
Yeah. When you ask about individual standouts, like who looks the part, like I said before, they were like that's kind of not really what this is, but they said physically, Amari Williams looks like a freak of nature. The way he moves, the way he operates. I mean, big, massive, broad shoulders, kind of chiseled body. That he looks like a 3-time conference defensive player of the year when he walks in the gym. That he's a physically imposing guy. That was the one. Like I said before, Jackson Robinson, the only guy that kind of had pro tendencies of the group. He has looked the part early, and Andrew Carr as well was like he. More of, as the system is, the point is driven home over and over and over again about the system. Andrew Carr is the system guy. So that's the one to keep a very close eye on. Of the guys that I've, talking behind the scenes, people that have been there have said these are the guys that what you can take out of these practices. They're like, I just have to rewire my brain to know what I'm looking at, because it's just not what I'm used to. My brain isn't wired to look at this style of coaching. So I'm not really even focused about is Kerr Creasem making shots, or is, what it's just like, I'm in the twilight zone looking at what I'm looking at. So those are the three that they did bring up talking to Coach Pope this week at his press conference. When he was asked that question, has anybody stood out to you? Anybody that has surprised you? He said no. And it's not really something when you build a roster this way, because there's such a substantial sample size of film on these guys in the portal available to you through Synergy, through the YouTube clips that are, they cut them for you, the portal clips. They're like, we have seen more of these kids than I could ever even dream of. So you don't really want them to be any better or worse because we recruited them to be a very specific role to fit our system. So our surprise is that everything is going according to plan. They look exactly the way I wanted them to look. That's a good thing. Said, if there is a surprise, it is that we kind of took a chance by taking on 7 super seniors. And it's kind of like what we talked about with, that Oscar, Jacob Toppin, CJ Frederick group where, Xavier Wheeler, where they peaked, Kellen Grady, they peaked really, really early and then just kind of never catapulted from there. We talked about that ad nauseum, that they just kind of plateaued really, really hard, and there wasn't a whole lot more you could get out of them by year's end. He said, when you take a group of 7 super seniors like this, it is easy for them to kind of be stuck in their ways because they been there, done that. They've established an identity of their own as individuals at their previous stops. Why would they be open to coaching and development at a new program? That was kind of the risk. It could have backfired where you get about guys with a bunch of high floors, but really, really low ceilings that are kind of stuck in their ways and not very coachable. He said these guys are all so invested in learning this system and being a part of this that the coachability and the accountability and kind of lifting each other up and the talking and the those traits that you kind of are the connectors that you need for teams to mesh. They have those traits very, very early. So he was like, it was a chance, it was a risk we were willing to take because you just kind of bet that these guys are mature and will overcome some of that, but they have been that. So if there is a surprise, that is a really, really good one in my opinion, Sean.
Yeah, it is. And to me, with this program and the way that it's going to be moving forward, the loudest voice to me is not going to be Mark Pope, the most vocal piece to it. With Cal, I think we were consistently having to hear Cal's voice the most. Listen, you could be at Rupp, and it didn't matter if there were 20,000 or 22,000 or whatever. You could hear John Calipari screaming constantly. Like, he was, to me, for 15 years, the loudest voice in the program in all areas of it. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. Yeah, you're going to hear Mark Pope after games and on the radio show and things like that. But these players are, to me, when you're talking about a player-led team, this one has a chance, I think, to have a lot of guys that can be vocal because they've gone through a lot. They've experienced a lot at a lot of different places. When you bring all those guys together, like these are guys that have been leaders at programs. You get them in a practice, and the thing that Cameron Mills said today, and if you haven't seen it, then go to UK Sports Network's Twitter account.
Make sure you do.
And make sure you talk about it. But Pope was talking about maybe he didn't name, or Cameron was talking about 2 players that there was a situation in practice today where they didn't communicate. And Mark Pope, instead of showing them, he made them talk about it between the 2 of them and figure it out. They had to figure it out. Well, you know what I like about that, Jack? In a game, those 2 got to figure it out. Yeah, you got a coach over there that can instruct and teach and guide and do those things. He can't step on the floor and do it, though. I want 2 dudes on the floor that can figure it out together and have that relationship to talk and communicate because it's putting it in their hands. And you can do that when you got older guys that you don't have to kind of teach them and show them because, look, the physicality, any level of basketball that you move to, whether it be middle school to high school to college, college to NBA, regardless, each level, it's the physicality that is a significant difference. And from high school senior to freshman to college, physicality, pace of the game, everything is thrown at you quicker. It's a big adjustment for guys. They're having to think a lot instead of playing a lot. These older guys, Jack, they've done it. And it's done the same at Wake Forest. It's done the same at San Diego State. It's done the same at Dayton. I've seen this game taught the same at a lot of different places over the last year that I've been to. The game's the game. The difference is you got older guys now that can do it and teach it and talk to each other on the floor. When you got guys that you don't have to kind of pull along from day one, you kind of better at maybe at a you're out of the gates a little quicker than what you have been the last few years, if that makes any sense.
And I have the quotes pulled out from Cameron Mills for the people that haven't watched that clip quite yet. Said they're not quite doing a lot of full court yet. According to Coach Pope, that's coming next week, but they're doing a lot of stuff because the most important thing of everything, as you can imagine, we're used to here at Kentucky having to integrate a new team every year. This is more so than we've ever done before with 12 new guys. What they're working on right now is making sure all of their throughput is coming from the same hard drive. These guys are on the same note, on the same team. They are all doing things together. And then said, a lot of three-point shots being shot and a lot of them being made. I promise you're going to be excited about what this team gives you falls.
Yeah.
Something similar to what I heard that, 35 threes per game identity is not just coach speak. It's not just let's use this as a recruiting pitch to bring in a guy like Kobe Brea, who is a high volume, high efficiency shooter. That's obviously music to his ears to hear that we take 35 of them and you're going to get 7. Kirk Kriisa took 6 a game, 6.5 or whatever it was. That's music to his ears. Like, it wasn't just for recruiting show, that the people there are saying they are launching and making them, which is very, very important. With the transition to full court next week, what are you hoping is the next thing that we hear coming out of practice of, okay, this is something that is new and fresh and different and working for this group, or an individual player that emerges? A note on Otega Owe, that was pretty interesting. Pope said that he kind of had to talk to him a couple times, and I'd heard during his recruiting process that the way he operates, he is kind of an emotional guy, has some kind of outbursts, kind of like Rob Dillingham was a very similar situation where a lot of that was kind of kept, under the rug of kind of wears his emotions on his sleeve. But his recovery and coachability after the fact, he makes mistakes, gets hard on himself, but then learns really, really quickly and takes coaching very well. I like that Pope threw that part in, that he had a kind of a rough couple of days and then put forth his best practice after the fact, because Otega is a guy that they're going to need. But similar storylines like that you're kind of keeping an eye on moving forward, Sean.
Well, I think right now, and obviously I've not been in those practices and I've not talked to anybody when it comes to who's been there, but I would say what is being talked about now, where there's not a lot of 5-on-5, I bet you got a lot of 3-on-3 situations, because in majority of the game, you've got 6 guys involved in a play, right? And probably some 4-on-4s and things. Look, at Dayton this week, I didn't see any 5-on-5 in practice. I saw all 4-on-4. Whether it was their transition, it didn't matter. Like a lot of schools, like that's a common thing to do this time of the year when you're teaching principals, whether it be on the defensive end or the offensive end. Maybe you do things without a 5-man, whether it be defensive stuff or offensive stuff. So I think next week when you move into 5-on-5s, I think that you want to hear like the ball's moving. You want to hear that guys are playing well together. I don't know how much we're going to get when it comes to the defensive end of the floor and stuff without actually seeing them go through it, Jack. But the biggest thing for me to get out of this summer session and practice when you get through July is everybody healthy. I think that's what you're hopeful for. When it comes to guys turning heads, maybe some of the guys that we've kind of looked at that were brought in that could possibly pop, but also may need some time in this program. Otega always a guy that you and I have been high on ever since he signed with Kentucky. Like I think that's a popular pick to break out and perform better. I sent you a couple of sets of him like a week ago on Twitter because, listen, my feed now is all basketball stuff, and it's basketball sets constantly. And I just thought I knew who it was the moment I saw Oklahoma, and it was just back-to-back sets that they drew up for him. But to me, with this, Jack, what I think I'm looking for when it comes to what Kentucky is, you talked about 35 threes a game. How many of those are taken out of transition? We talked so much about random basketball the last 12 months, with John Calipari, John Welch, and those guys that were here. Your transition stuff, it can be random, but it's still structured. It's still designed. It's guys sprinting lanes, and you got a rim runner, you got a trail man, you got a guard, and whatever the initial action is or secondary action when you get into the half court. You're going to get a lot of looks there because this program is going to pitch the ball ahead. You're going to see the ball advanced a ton, not by the dribble, by the pass. You're going to see quick threes from the wing. You're going to see guys getting downhill with dribble handoffs. You're going to see pitches to the trailer and shots from the top of the key, like all those things. The thing for me will be, what does Kentucky do when it gets into a half-court set and there is no transition game? Who do they play through, and what are the designs that they use and the schemes that they use to get Kobe Bragg free? How many threes can Kobe Bragg get just by running hard and being in shape this year? Because I think Mark Pope is probably going to preach that and pitch that a ton to these guys. You be in shape and you run, you're going to get looks in transition, which also has to mean you're getting stops defensively. So they go hand in hand. The better you are defensively, the more opportunities you're going to get to run. So that's the things that I'm looking for, but we're not going to get to see that as much in June and July. But to me, winning the summer is just getting these reps in and staying healthy. That's the thing that I'm looking for the most out of the next 4 to 5 weeks, is get me to August with everybody healthy. Then let's get into those workouts and practice. And then let's see, does some bodies change in the weight room here? Like we saw that a lot under Cal. Do we see that with this program?
Yeah. That was one of the more recent talking points with the strength and conditioning coach added coming from the Milwaukee Bucks. Got our 5th full-time assistant, Coach McLean, that came from Lamar University under Alvin Brooks. The third's father, who is the head coach there, was with him at Houston together to kind of round out that staff. Mark Pope said at his press conference that he had a couple more spots to fill. That's kind of the next priority. He's filled out a pretty solid support staff with a lot of helping hands in different areas that I think is very, very important. But big question, Sean, how important is that GM role? Like, that's the one thing. Syracuse just added one today. That's the one that fans are kind of zeroed in on and saying, like, that's the one thing that this program is missing right now. Somebody to help with the juggling of recruiting personnel with portal personnel, though all of the chaos that comes in March, April, May. We need help with. We need somebody to not just put all of that load on Mark Pope, because he has other things to take care of and roster building. He can't be in charge of all that by himself. How important is that for you to add a GM? I know Nazim Muhammad is the rumored name. Talking to some people around OKC, I haven't totally ruled it out, but said kind of would surprise them if Nazi took that because he is in such a good spot with OKC. But stranger things have happened, and it's a good spot. It's a good opportunity for him if he were to do it. It's just they're not totally sold on that being the case. How important is it for you, and is there anybody that you would hope would take that job if they do look for one?
It's important to me because seeing how these programs operate firsthand, and I'm talking. So, I've been to Notre Dame, I've been to Morehead State, I've been to Western Kentucky, I've been to Tennessee, I've been to Dayton, like all these programs that I've been to in the last, 5-6 months. And I talked to a number of other coaches, and the same conversation keeps being brought up to me. It's we just don't have enough guys. Like, there's so much that needs to be done, and there's always something that's waiting to be done, or somebody's having to double up duties. Like, man, when you go to these programs, I'm seeing GAs run basketball camps. I'm seeing GAs do individual workouts. I'm seeing GAs coding film. I watch guys do 5 or 6 different jobs. They're working in graphics. They're doing everything. Like, to me, that's the value of it, is you just get another guy in your program that can take some off of the other guys that are there. And it allows guys to then do what they're good at and to key into the role. And you have an advantage when you're at Kentucky. You got money, you got a bigger budget, you can pay guys, you can do analytics, you can do film, you can do all these different things, Jack, that's not a luxury that every single program in college basketball has. Every program in college basketball is competing for the same thing, a national championship. They're all not on the same level, budget wise. That has been the eye opener to me going around these schools. So I don't know if I've got anyone in mind. I mean, obviously, I think a guy that has a lot of experience in the NBA and understanding how those organizations run and operate. I know Chuck Hayes is a guy that's had a ton of experience, but what he's doing, I don't know if he moves out of that role.
Dude, I
But
talked to him with the Warriors. He's like
I
a
know.
step away from it being a step away of the GM of the Warriors. Like he's worked his way up the ladder over there, where I kind of had a similar mindset, and then it was just like, yep, no way. He's but Nazi's the closest to where he's close, but kind of a step away from being a step away from being a step away, where he could use one more little oomph to kind of push him over the edge to kind of where Chuck is right now. I don't know where
nowadays. And here's the other thing: does it have to be a former player?
No,
because
I don't think it does.
Because here's where I think you got guys like Chuck, you got guys like Tayshaun Prince, you've got guys that I'm talking that have had success as players, but also in this game on the other side of it, and not necessarily in coaching. Those guys have a network too that I think you could tap into. And to me, if you don't take a guy that you know personally, maybe you go through a guy you do know personally and you reach out and say, hey, look, you've worked with a ton of people. Is there anybody you recommend? Because that's a network of possibilities there for you as well. So I am all in on adding someone.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important. And I don't even know if it's about the specific duty that they do. It's just that they're available to do. Like, you don't need yes men. You need see and do men. You need people that see it and do it. See it needs to be done and you go do it. Like you need those guys all over your program and your GAs, your managers, it doesn't matter. Like, this is a community of probably 20 to 30 people working around the clock to make a program successful. You can never have enough. And I think these jobs in basketball, I think they're going to continue to add roles. Why do you think I'm trying to break into it? Because there's so much that needs to be done, Jack. It's incredible what needs to be done on a daily basis with a college basketball program. I can't imagine the football side where there's 75 to 80 players that you got to take care of on a daily basis. Like, it's wild to me, the environment and how everyone has to be on top of everything for it to be successful. If one guy slips, it's kind of a domino effect.
Yeah. On that note, Jamal McGlure is a basketball development consultant and community ambassador for the Toronto Raptors. You could get him tomorrow. I'm telling you, you'll be able to make that happen in a minute. I also love the little connection thing that just happened in our chat. That was really freaking cool. Pressure washing by Sterling Wash gave 2 donations. Shout out to you. Couldn't recommend you more for your services. Comments are great. And then a couple below that, JT says, hey, I got my house and driveway pressure washed by Sterling Wash. Give them a call. They'll treat you right. Fast and affordable. That's Sterling Wash. Ad read. Bam. That is awesome. Like, what a small world. That's so cool. So yeah, I appreciate that little interaction there. But yeah, we're starting to wrap up. I didn't see nobody said media tryouts. Pope did talk about that with the 13th roster spot, said that he would host media tryouts this upcoming week if he couldn't find a 13th guy. So I am happy to nominate myself for that and be at the worst player in the history of Kentucky basketball. I would love to own that honor. But apparently, you say what?
What number would you wear? What jersey number would you pick?
Ooh. So 7 is like, my birthday is July 7th. So like, that's always been my number. But like, that's kind of a Kerr Kriisa vibe right now, you know, like he kind of owned that whole Luka stole that number from me, the 77. Like, I'm not trying to steal his stuff. Like, I think Andrew Carr has it right now anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But like, that's their own little vibe. So I would probably, it would have to be a number that's not being used. I think, I don't know. I'll have to think on that. What would be your number?
And you put me on the spot because I don't know everybody's jersey number at the moment. What are some numbers that aren't being used? So
I don't know. That's why I put you on the spot, damn it.
I wore 24 all the way through my play.
I don't think that's used. Yeah, you could use that.
So I wore that.
Maybe for Bashburn?
No. It was just the one that was handed to me when I was in first grade. And I think I just wanted to stick with it all the way through. But it became like a thing for me. Like I wore it in AAU. I wore it every level that I played at. So I guess like if I play again, do I just flip it and wear 42? Because that seems to be a thing too, right? Like you either go up one or down one, or maybe you flip it. Could do a Bronny James and wear number 9.
Weird number. I hate that. I think that's ugly. But I think Rondo wore it really well with the Celtics, but not for the Lakers and not for.
Imagine your number's ugly. You know what I mean? But it makes a ton of sense. I get it. What you're saying.
Wear 6. Wear 6. Like it's you guys are a 23-6 family. Wear 6. What are you doing? Like you're freaking LeBron. You're Bronny. Make whoever is 6 right now for the Lakers tell them to kick rock so you get cut from the team. That's my jersey number.
Add the 2 together and wear 29. I mean,
ew, that's an ugly ass number. That is like
subtract it and wear 17.
That's a better number, but still kind of ugly.
By the way, I'm going to go to Louisville practice at some point. I meant to tell you that.
He was right in front of me at Shelbyville. So I just didn't know how to approach that conversation where it's like, all right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I said I could pick you up like a dumbbell. You know, like how do you I don't think there's a way to appropriately bring that up in casual conversation besides that. But like I just didn't have the balls to like just outright say that we talked about you on KSR, whether or not we could lift you up as a barbell, and talking about shark attacks, you know, what type of shark we could bench press. Like, you know, it didn't come up organically.
Listen, I'm going to go, and that post practice, I'm going to take a picture with him, and that's going to be comedy. Like, I'm interested to see when I say, like, hey, yeah, did you ever see your face on a dumbbell? Like, trust me, if I don't have my shirt on, you won't recognize me because I don't look like the guy in that picture that night. I wish you'd ask. I wish you'd ask. I love that a coach described you as the writer guy to me this week, though.
Like that's a lame thing to be known as, man.
And he did this.
That's lame. I don't want to be known as the writer guy. That's
that's no. Like he goes, yeah, he's the writer guy. And no,
thanks, coach. Oh, all right. This is getting a little on the cusp of getting ridiculous, and we're gonna cut off before we get to that point. Another really fun show. I really enjoyed this. Anything else that we need to talk about before we get out of there? Oh, very quick message, very quick statement. Very, very close friend of mine, friend of the program, friend of the show. Kenny Clark, Sky Clark's dad, suffered a stroke here the last couple of days. He's in the ICU right now. I talked back and forth with Sky today. I know he didn't play for us, but he signed with us, and that family is as beautiful as they come. That man is as incredible as they come. Pray for him. It absolutely broke my heart today hearing that. So pray for him. It's a really, really good family who he won't say this publicly, but he has a lot of love for Kentucky basketball, for this program. This fan base really meant a lot to him when Sky tore his ACL, kind of went through his struggles and you know, dealing with the decommitment and just kind of the mental struggles that kind of came with all of that. really appreciated the fan support with BBN, so he could use a lot of those prayers for you guys if you have them for him. So love you, Kenny. If you hear this, you know I got endless support for you and the Clark family. So that kind of broke my heart today, but he's a fighter. He'll recover, but that's a really tough blow. But yeah, let's go on and get the heck out of here. Sean, anything else you want to address before we get out?
No, I think that's got it. It feels good to be on here, and I know the month of June was a little different for us. We didn't get as many episodes in. We hosted KSR earlier this month, and now we're turning the page into July probably when we record again, Jack. So I mean, it's time is moving, and it'll be basketball season before we know it.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. I'm hoping that they do kind of an open practice thing at some point. Hope talked about that early on. I'm hoping that we get some type of like, hey, come see what we look like. With TBT coming up, they are scrimmaging against one another. That's a new thing that the NCAA, I guess it's always been a thing, but because they're former players, they can have on-court instruction together and scrimmage against one another. I think that's going to be a blast. I really hope that we get to see that, or it's streamed or something, at least highlights at minimum. I'd like to see how Lamont Butler does against Eric Bledsoe and how Andrew Carr does against Nate Sestina. I think that would be a really cool storyline that I'll certainly be following closely. I'm very excited for TBT, but I'm more excited to see how hands-on they can be with this current roster and how much they can grow from it.
Yeah, I am too. I'm glad you said that. I actually got to return a phone call from somebody involved with TBT. They tried to call me and I completely missed it. And I was doing something. I forgot all about it until you said it. Bad part is that's been 6 days ago. So.
Hey, just return your call. Yep. Not relevant anymore. Thanks, man. TBT is over. The event, call them back in August. Hey,
it literally just hit me when you said TBT. I was like, no. Because I literally replied, hey, doing this. Because it's been basketball for me for literally like 5 weeks straight.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually get a week off here. So we'll see what life looks like.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. All right, guys. Appreciate you for joining us. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. And we will see you next time on the Sources Say podcast. We'll see you then.